On Christmas morning, my mother handed out gifts to everyone in the room except me. She stood in front of that tree like a queen distributing favors to people she deemed worthy. My father got a gold watch. My sister got a Cartier box and laughed before she even opened it, because she already knew it would be expensive. Even my sister's fiancé got a leather watch case with his initials stamped into it. I sat there with my coffee going cold, waiting for my name. It never came. I thought maybe there was one bag left in the hallway. Maybe one small box tucked behind the tree. There wasn't. When I finally asked if there had been a mix-up, my mother looked at me the way people look at a stain on a white rug. She said, "Why waste money on you?" Then she smiled, no warmth, no hesitation, and added, "We only keep you around out of habit." My sister tilted her head, looked me up and down, and said, "You're just not on our level." My father said nothing. He adjusted the cuff of his sweater and told everyone to open their gifts before breakfast got cold. I smiled, because sometimes smiling is the only dignified thing left when people try to erase you in your own family. Then I stood up, and I walked out. 8 days later, on January 2nd, at exactly 8:30 in the morning, a package arrived at the front door of their showroom. My sister opened it and screamed. My mother started shaking. My father grabbed his phone, called me 3 times, then 6, then 12. By 9:05 a.m., he was leaving voicemails in a voice I had never heard from him before. Panicked. But before I tell you what was in that package, let me tell you the truth. The version they hoped would never come out. My name is Avery. I'm 31 years old. And my family ran a luxury home furnishing showroom in Savannah called Sloan House Interiors. From the outside, they looked untouchable. My mother, Dana, floated through charity luncheons and gallery openings, telling everyone she had raised a family of refined people. My sister Chloe was the face of the brand online. Silk sofas, imported lighting, carefully curated tablescapes with captions about timeless elegance. My father Richard presented himself as the patriarch who had built something lasting. Inside the family, I was the embarrassing extra. I hadn't gone into the showroom. I hadn't married well. I hadn't built a social media persona around my cheekbones and neutral cashmere. I worked in commercial acquisitions and asset restructuring. I understood contracts, distressed properties, debt exposure, and, most importantly, the difference between looking rich and actually being solvent. My family called it my little paperwork career. The same way people dismiss oxygen until they're drowning. 6 years earlier, when the business nearly collapsed after a brutal financing crunch and a landlord dispute my father had catastrophically mismanaged, I stepped in quietly. Not because they deserved it, because I still believed that if I saved them once, they would finally see me as one of them. I used the payout from a deal I had closed in Charlotte. I bought the building their flagship showroom operated in through a holding company. I cleared the arrears. I negotiated their vendor exposure down to something survivable. I personally guaranteed the seasonal inventory line that kept their entire operation alive. My mother called it a blessing. My father told people he had pulled off a miracle turnaround. Chloe called it proof that the family always lands on its feet. None of them ever understood what I had actually done. They thought I was helping with paperwork. They never grasped that the building was mine. The rescue was mine. The reason their candles stayed lit every December was me. For 6 years they paid almost nothing, ignored every hint that I wanted proper structure, and treated me like an awkward relative who just kept showing up. Christmas wasn't an isolated cruelty. It was just the first time they stopped pretending the cruelty was accidental. I didn't cry when I left that morning. I did something my family had never once expected from me. I got quiet. The dangerous kind. I drove back to my condo, took off my coat, made tea, sat at my kitchen counter, and wrote down everything I had covered for them in the previous 6 years. Property taxes on the building, insurance, emergency roof work, 2 vendor settlements. The line of credit renewal I had personally signed when their bank was ready to cut them loose. A below-market occupancy agreement I had foolishly allowed to drift year after year because family was supposed to mean something. I printed the current deed. I printed the loan documents. I printed the trademark registration for Sloan House Interiors, which my grandmother had quietly assigned to me during the business crisis because she didn't trust my father not to sink the family name entirely. Then I called my attorney. Not the family attorney. Mine. By Monday morning, she had done what good lawyers do when a motion is finally ready to become paperwork. She made it clean. Effective immediately. My personal guarantee on the January inventory line was withdrawn. Effective immediately. The month-to-month preferential occupancy of the flagship premises would terminate in 30 days. Effective immediately. Any use of the Sloan House mark without my written authorization would expose them to injunctive action. Effective immediately, all communication was to go through counsel. I asked her to put the documents in a white gift box inside the courier package. She laughed once when I said it, then realized I was serious. I was. If they wanted symbolism, I could do symbolism. On January 2nd at 8:30 in the morning, the package landed at the showroom door just before they opened. Chloe brought it inside herself. She assumed it was a late holiday gift from a client. She peeled back the paper, opened the white box, saw the documents clipped beneath a brass key tag for the showroom master lock, and screamed for our mother. Dana read the first page and sat down hard on an ottoman like her knees had simply disappeared. My father came out of his office mid-conversation about a New Year design consultation, took one look at the letterhead and went pale. Chloe called me first. I let it ring. Then my mother called. Then my father. Then all three again. By 9:05, my attorney emailed to confirm receipt had been signed for, and my father was apparently in full panic, demanding to know what right I thought I had. What right? That was almost funny. People are always offended by your boundaries when they built their comfort out of your silence. He left me a voicemail on his third attempt. Avery, pick up. There has to be a misunderstanding. 3 minutes later. This is outrageous. Call me now. Then one from my mother. Cold and shaking. You are not doing this over Christmas. Then one from Chloe. And this one was almost impressive in how quickly her voice shifted from smug to desperate. Avery, if this is some weird stunt, it's not cute. We have clients today. Grant is here. Dad is freaking out. Call me back. I didn't. I listened to every voicemail once, saved them all, and forwarded them to my attorney. At noon, my father sent a text claiming the building couldn't possibly be mine because he had built the business. That was exactly the point. He had confused building a business with owning the ground it stood on, because for 6 years, nobody had forced him to read a single line of what he had actually signed. I answered with 5 words. Read the attachments more carefully. Then I blocked the number. Within an hour, Chloe had posted a quote about betrayal on her Instagram story. My mother started calling extended family. By evening, I had heard from 2 aunts, 1 cousin, and a family friend from church who wanted to know if I had really decided to destroy my mother's livelihood over hurt feelings. Hurt feelings. I remember staring at that phrase and thinking about how convenient it must be to compress 6 years of exploitation into a mood. What do you call it when people accept your money, your protection, your legal risk, your silence, your labor, and still make a point of showing you that you are beneath them? Whatever word you choose, hurt feelings isn't strong enough. The next day they came to my condo in person. My father in an overcoat he hadn't buttoned properly. He had clearly dressed in a hurry. My mother with that rigid social smile she wore when she planned to say something vicious in a soft voice. Chloe in cream boots in fury. Grant standing half a step behind them looking like a man who had just realized his future in-laws were not who he thought they were. My father started talking before I invited anyone in. He said there had been enough theatrics and we needed to resolve this like adults. I asked which adults he meant. Because the last time I saw these particular adults, they had handed luxury gifts to everyone in the room except one daughter and called that normal. My mother cut in and said I was turning a family misunderstanding into a business attack. I asked what exactly had been misunderstood when she said they only kept me around out of habit. Chloe rolled her eyes. Here we go. She claimed they had all been joking. That Christmas had gotten tense. That I was always so literal. So sensitive. So dramatic. That word again. Sensitive. Families like mine love that word because it lets cruel people pretend the real problem is your nervous system. I told them the documents were valid, the deadlines were real, and if they wanted to discuss a commercial transition, they could do it through counsel. My father's face changed. The polished public version cracked, and I saw the man underneath. The one who had spent years needing me to stay small. He said I would never have had that building without him. I said maybe not. But he also wouldn't still be inside it without me. Grant looked at Chloe. Chloe looked away. My mother tried a different route and started crying. She said I was humiliating the family. That people were already talking. That clients would ask questions. That my grandmother would be ashamed of me. I asked her if my grandmother would have been proud of Christmas morning. She said that wasn't fair. I said fair hadn't been part of this family in years. Then Chloe said the one thing that made everything click for Grant. She snapped that I had always been jealous because I was never the face of anything. Not the business. Not the family. Not the room. There it was. Not money. Not gifts. Status. They had reduced everything to social position so completely that they couldn't imagine any other measure of value. I asked Chloe if she knew whose personal guarantee was keeping the business line open that quarter. She said, Dad handles the finances. I looked at my father and asked whether he had told her the bank had already been notified about the withdrawal. His expression answered before his words did. Chloe turned white. Grant said, Wait, what bank? Nobody answered him. My father stepped forward and lowered his voice like intimacy could substitute for honesty. He said the credit issue was temporary, and that if I stopped acting irrational, he was sure we could fix this privately. I asked him a very simple question. If I was so irrational, so unimportant, so beneath all of you, why did every single one of you come running the second I stopped protecting you? He had no answer. None of them did. My mother shifted tactics, blaming my job, my independence, the city I lived in, the way success had apparently made me hard. Chloe said I was using money as a weapon. I almost laughed. There is no accusation more revealing than that one, coming from people who only notice money when it stops flowing toward them. My father warned me I was making a mistake I could never undo. I told him he was right about one thing. There are some things you cannot undo. Why waste money on you? Is one of them. Habit is another. By the time they left, my mother was furious. My father was trying to look dignified through panic. Chloe was whisper fighting with Grant in the hallway. And I felt something I hadn't felt around my family since I was a teenager. Calm. Not because it didn't hurt. Because it finally made complete sense. The same people who said I wasn't on their level were now begging the floor beneath their feet not to move. That floor had my name on it. The ugliness started when they realized guilt wasn't going to work. My mother called relatives and framed me as unstable. My father told vendors I was having some kind of breakdown and trying to extort him. Chloe posted quotes about narcissists, ungrateful daughters, and women who confuse bitterness with power. Then my father made his real move. He had a lawyer send over a packet claiming the building had always been intended as a family asset, that my company merely held title for tax convenience, and that Sloan House Interiors had acquired equitable rights through years of occupancy and business investment. It was an aggressive argument. I might have respected it if it hadn't been stitched together with fiction. Attached to the packet were supposed board minutes from a meeting that never happened, an internal memo I had never seen, and a scanned signature that looked enough like mine to make an uninformed person hesitate. My attorney did not hesitate. She called me and said exactly 2 words. They forged. For 1 long minute I didn't speak. Then I sat down at my desk and pulled every archive I had. Metadata, email chains, version histories, bank wires, insurance writers, the original transfer documents from my grandmother. I don't know if my father thought I would fold because I was emotional, or because I was his daughter, or because people like him assume confidence is the same thing as competence. What he forgot was that my entire profession exists because other people lie on paper and then act offended when someone notices. We responded hard. My attorney sent a demand to preserve all records, accused their counsel of relying on facially defective documents, and filed for declaratory relief confirming both title control and trademark rights. The bank, once shown the dispute and the withdrawn guarantee, froze any discretionary expansion on their account. 2 large January inventory shipments were paused. A local design blog picked up whispers that Sloan House Interiors was facing operational instability. That was when the family began to fracture in ways even gossip couldn't soften. Grant called me privately one evening. He said he didn't want details but needed to know whether Chloe had lied to him about the business being hers someday. I told him the honest version. Chloe had been promised a throne inside a kingdom she didn't own. He was silent for several seconds. Then he thanked me in a voice that sounded much older than the last time I had seen him. 2 days later, their engagement photos disappeared from her page. My father tried one final family intervention at the showroom itself. He invited me under the pretense of discussing a structured exit. When I walked in, my mother, Chloe, the family attorney, and 2 senior staff members were already waiting, as if they could pressure me by turning it into a ceremony. My father began with a speech about legacy, about blood, about the humiliation of being challenged by his own daughter. He said I had always wanted to prove something. I said I had. That I existed, for starters. My mother said this was all because nobody had made enough fuss over me at Christmas. I looked at both staff members and asked whether they knew the family had told me they only kept me around out of habit. The room went silent. My father snapped that private words were private. I asked why cruelty only becomes private after witnesses appear. Then the family attorney slid a proposed settlement across the table. 18 months to remain in the building at the same minimal rate. Full permission to keep using the brand. A mutual non-disparagement clause that would have gagged me while protecting them. In exchange, my father was prepared to acknowledge my contribution in a private letter. A private letter. After years of public disrespect, forged paperwork, and a Christmas performance designed to remind me I didn't count, he was offering to maybe write down that I had been useful. I pushed the settlement back across the table. No. One staff member looked like she wanted to disappear. The other looked like she had just figured out who had really been keeping the lights on. My father called me vindictive. My mother called me cold. Chloe said I was trying to ruin her life. I asked the question I had been holding for years. At what exact point did all of you decide I was only family when I was paying for things? No one answered. The attorney ended the meeting 10 minutes later. He could see what they couldn't. The facts were not on their side. The performance was. And performances have a very short shelf life once the documents start talking. The hearing was not dramatic the way movies imagine courtrooms to be. It was something far more satisfying. It was slow humiliation under fluorescent lights. My father arrived in an expensive gray suit, as if fabric could lend credibility to forged board minutes. My mother sat beside him rigid and offended. Chloe looked furious and exhausted. Their attorney looked considerably less confident than he had at the showroom, which told me he had finally done the reading his clients should have done years earlier. My side was simple. Title history, transfer records, financial rescue documents, guarantee withdrawal, trademark chain, email evidence, and metadata showing that the board minutes they had submitted had been created 3 days after Christmas. On Chloe's laptop, and altered twice before production. That last part made even the judge pause. Their attorney said it was a draft accidentally mislabeled. My attorney asked why a draft had my simulated signature already embedded into it. There are moments when a lie dies in public and you can almost hear the air leave it. That was one of them. My father was asked directly whether he had ever paid commercial rent consistent with an ownership claim. He started with a speech about family arrangements and informal understandings. The judge cut him off and asked for numbers. Actual numbers. Specific months. Specific accounts. He had none. Chloe was asked whether she had publicly represented the business as family-owned without clarifying the structure. She said everyone knew what she meant. The judge said that was not an answer. When the forged minutes came up again, my mother leaned toward my father and hissed something sharp enough that even from across the aisle, I could see panic move through both of them. By the time the order came down, the result was exactly what the facts required. Title confirmed in my holding company. Right to terminate occupancy confirmed. Immediate injunction on unauthorized brand use. Referral of the forged document issue for further review. My attorney told me later that judges don't enjoy being handed family melodrama wrapped around bad paperwork. We walked out and my father tried one last time in the corridor. He said I had made my point and asked if I was really going to follow through. Yes. Chloe stepped in front of me and asked whether destroying the showroom would finally make me feel important. I said no. Being treated like I existed would have been enough. For the next 3 weeks, reality did what drama always hates most. Kept going. Vendors tightened terms. A planned winter collection launch was canceled. A local magazine quietly removed Sloan House interiors from a feature on legacy businesses after a polite but devastating letter from my attorney. Grant moved out of Chloe's condo. 2 staff members resigned. My mother stopped posting entirely. My father, who had spent years acting like the building was simply a backdrop he could command forever, was suddenly supervising bubble wrap and discounted fixtures under emergency timelines. When the deadline came, I went to the showroom with counsel and a locksmith. The place had been damaged on the way out. Not destroyed, damaged in the more expensive way. Missing inventory tags. Custom drapery rods bent beyond reuse. Display lamps without bulbs. Scraped marble tables. Vendor binders gone. Petty. Time-consuming. Deliberate. On the central table where Chloe usually filmed her content, there was a white gift box waiting for me. Inside was one of the holiday gift tags from Christmas. Mine. Blank. No name. No gift. Just the empty tag tucked beneath a note in Chloe's handwriting. Some things never change. I stared at it for a long moment. And almost laughed because even after everything, even after the hearings and the panic and the complete collapse of everything they had built on borrowed ground, they still needed me to know that in their private mythology I was the problem. That is the thing about people like that. They can lose everything real and still cling to the fantasy that they were morally taller while falling. The locksmith asked if I wanted the box thrown away. I said no. I slipped the tag into my coat pocket. Some trophies arrive in stranger packaging than others. I sold the building 4 months later to a hospitality group from Atlanta for more than my father had once told people the entire showroom business was worth. I didn't keep the Sloan House trademark active for my family. I retired it. Licensed a few design archives connected to my grandmother's original work. And let the rest of the myth die with a dignity they had never earned. People in Savannah talked, of course. Some said I was ruthless. Some said my parents had it coming. Some insisted there had to be more to the story because nobody would really go that far over Christmas gifts. That was always the easiest way to misunderstand it. It was never about gifts. It was about being told clearly, deliberately, in front of a room full of people that you do not count, while the infrastructure you built kept every light in that room burning. It was about being useful enough to exploit and invisible enough to mock. After the showroom closed, My father rented a much smaller space outside the historic district and tried to reopen under a new name. Without the old location, the old credit relationships, or the old image, it never had the same pull. My mother's social circle shrank fast once invitations stopped carrying prestige. Chloe tried to pivot into lifestyle consulting. But brand deals dry up when your audience realizes your elegant world was mostly staged on borrowed ground. She and Grant did not get back together. My father sent me 3 letters over the next year. The first said I had destroyed the family. The second said he hoped I was satisfied. The third asked why I had become so cold. I almost answered that one. Not because I owed him anything. Because the question was so perfectly revealing. He still believed coldness had started with me. Not with a mother who could watch one daughter sit empty-handed on Christmas morning while everyone else unwrapped proof they mattered. I didn't write back. Some questions don't deserve answers. They deserve memory. I built a new firm the following spring. Smaller, sharper. Focused on distressed asset transitions and family health commercial disputes. Turns out there is an entire market for helping people untangle businesses held together by ego and silence. I was very good at it. On the wall of my office, framed in a simple black frame, hangs that blank gift tag. No name. No inscription. Nothing. Clients sometimes ask what it is. I tell them it's a reminder of the cost of waiting too long for people to acknowledge what they already know they owe you. Do I feel guilty? No. I felt grief. I felt rage. I felt the sour exhaustion that comes when you finally understand that your family knew exactly where to wound you, and did it anyway. But guilt? Not once. Because the truth is, I didn't destroy my family. I stopped underwriting a performance they were too arrogant to believe could ever end. And every now and then, usually on quiet winter mornings, I think back to Christmas morning. My mother standing there with gifts for everyone except me. Her voice smooth and certain. We only keep you around out of habit. Then I think of January 2nd. The package. The panic. The unanswered calls. The moment the people who had treated me like background noise realized the entire room had been wired through me all along. If I have learned anything, it is this. Blood is not proof of love. Proximity is not proof of respect. And being tolerated is not the same thing as belonging. They spent years trying to convince me I wasn't on their level. In the end, they were right about exactly one thing. I was never meant to stay where they put me.